This morning, I want to tell you a story that I've never shared in a sermon before. And as I was thinking about it this week, I was thinking, yeah, that would be perfect for the topic to tell that story. And then a few days later, I realized you've never told that story before. And after preaching around 1,000 sermons at this church alone, I thought to myself, well, why have you shared every story you know and have been tempted to make up some new ones because of that? Wow, and maybe you'd like me to, by the way. Why haven't you shared that story of something so big in your life that seems so relevant to our lives as believers and as believers who are in the world to bless and serve other people? And I realized that without thinking about it, I hadn't shared the story for the same reason that you don't share certain stories in your life. And maybe you've trained yourself not even to think about certain experiences you've had in your life because of the pain that the memory brings, the shame that you feel around the story, the embarrassment or the stigma that you might associate with it, or whatever it might be. And I realized, well, that's probably why you haven't shared that story and you didn't even realize it. And then a few more days went by and Sunday was around and I was like, you sure you want to tell that story? Like, can I think of a way to get out of it? I was 19 years old and a student at Birmingham Southern College here in town. I'd been dating a girl for several months and it was Christmas time. And she had a great idea that we should go to the Galleria and go shopping for Christmas presents. You know, regardless of the fact that I didn't have any money, she wanted to go and like, hey, let's go. I'll find something for mom and dad. So we went down there and the lights were beautiful and the music was playing and everything was great. And we shopped and walked around the upper level and then kind of worked our way down to the bottom level and went into a store. And I can see it like it was yesterday. We walked around the store, she found something she wanted to buy, and we got in line. And because it was around Christmas time, the lines were really long. And in this case, the line from the register went back all the way into one of the aisles of the store. And so we got in the back of the line, which was in an aisle, and it was kind of a cramped area. And I noticed that there was someone in front of me who was acting really strange. And they kind of had a crazy look in their eyes. And we're doing weird things. We're like touching all the products and like just acting in a really bizarre way like I'd never seen before. And suddenly I had this feeling that something bad was about to happen. That someone was going to be attacked or someone was going to start screaming or something. And suddenly in that moment, it was like the aisles beside that we were in, one of the aisles, started to close in. Suddenly I felt like I couldn't breathe. It was like an anvil was sitting on my chest. Suddenly my hands were shaking and I felt like I was about to start crying. And it was like my brain was just revolting against me. And not knowing what else to do, I grabbed my girlfriend's hand at the time and said, I've got to get out of here. I've got to get out of there. She's like, well, I haven't checked out. I was like, I've got to get out of here. And I pulled her by the hand. She dropped what she had and we were out of the store. And before I even stopped, we walked down to the food court area there, and I found an empty table. I collapsed into a chair. I put my head down on the table and began to sob. You're thinking, well, why would you be sobbing? I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't know what had happened. I didn't know what had happened to me. I didn't know what was going on inside of me, and she certainly didn't know what was going on inside of me and could have thought I was a lunatic, but thankfully, it was just like, you're okay, whatever it is, you're okay. But I didn't feel okay. My heart was racing. I couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking. I was crying. I didn't know why. My body had totally revolted against me. I'd never heard the phrase panic attack before when I was 19 years old. I didn't know that panic disorder and anxiety attacks and a whole host of other mental illnesses don't really set in on people oftentimes until their late teenage years or in their 20s. I didn't know any of that. She didn't know any of that. I just knew something was horrible was happening to me and I couldn't put a name to it and I thought I was going crazy. And that set me on a path, many years long path, of trying to figure out and trying to learn what happened to me that day. It didn't take too long when I finally got up the courage to ask and to go to a counselor at the school to discover that I'd had a quote-unquote panic attack, and that sometimes people who have those also have an anxiety disorder, which come to find out many years later, I realized that I did have a generalized anxiety disorder. And thank God I was able to get the help that I needed. Why am I telling you that? Well, back in May, Andrew and myself and the staff, we were looking at sermons for the rest of the year. And it occurred to us that this is a difficult time of the year for a lot of people. What is a festive season, perhaps in your mind, is anything but festive in a lot of people's minds. It may come as a surprise to you, or it may not, that not everyone looks forward to the holidays. That the holidays aren't wrapped in light and joy and gingerbread and sparkly lights and rainbows and butterflies for everyone. That a lot of people actually dread this time of year. A realization for me that I only had long after I became a pastor and began ministering to people and seeing how people struggle during this time of year. Some with seasonal affective disorder and the change of the light that brings on depression for a lot of people. Others, being around your extended family makes you feel like you have mental health issues, right? Or maybe wish you did have mental health problems so that you wouldn't have to go to the event, right? It's okay to laugh. Sometimes family can give us mental health problems. Others of you come face to face with grief during this time of year. And when you gather with family, you realize someone's not there. Someone who was a rock, a fixture, a foundation in your life, someone you love. And the busyness of life and sports and school and work and church and scouts or whatever you do can drown all that out. But when it's time to gather at the table at Thanksgiving or Christmas and a chair is empty, you can't distract yourself away anymore. And the grief comes up to the surface. Or it could be the stress of finances or schedules. But it's true that the holidays aren't a holiday for everyone. As believers, it's so important for us to talk about these things. And frankly, the church has been a part of the problem because we haven't responded helpfully in addressing the stigma, the unnecessary stigma that comes with mental health. Why is that? I don't know. I think in the world of religiotainment, or what I call kind of religious entertainment, then in a religiotainment model, everyone's got to feel good all the time. And whatever I say has to make you feel good all the time. Otherwise, you may not come back, and then I might be looking for a job, right? So religiotainment would say, wait, don't talk about hard things. Don't talk about sad things. Don't talk about grief things, because we just got to make people feel good. We got to make people feel good. We got to pump happy gas into the room all the time so that people will come back regardless of how disconnected that might be from their reality, much less the reality of people in their lives. You need to know, I need to know, that 1 in 4 or 1 in 5, depending on where you look, of Americans experience mental illness or emotional struggles every single year. So if you're gathering at Thanksgiving or Christmas with more than 4 or 5 people, know that someone there is struggling, is carrying a burden that you can't see. That is, they feel like they're at war with their own mind. They can't trust their own mind. Their feelings have turned against them and are the enemy. to be at war with your own mind, to not be able to trust your own mind, to feel your mind turn against you is a terrible thing. And we don't realize how common this is. You know, one of the things that we think of as a common disaster that happens, that we see in the news, we talk about at work, we see on AL.com in the news, is a traffic accident or a traffic fatality. We think of that as being common, as perhaps happening every day here in Birmingham. But what we don't realize is that a lot more people, 10,000 more people every year, take their own life. More than traffic accidents, more than something we're all familiar with and grieve and pray about, breast cancer. More than that even are people who succumb to despair. You will be around people over the holidays, I guarantee you. You may be around them right now sitting next to you who are grappling with these things. Are you in ministry? Are you the light of Christ? Are you a source of hope in that person's life? These are just some of the things that they experience. If it's anxiety, it's trembling or rapid heart rate, increased breathing, sweating, muscle tension, feeling nervous, hypervigilance, a sense of dread that something's going to happen, or a sense of dread that they've already done something wrong and not knowing why. Panic, a sense of impending danger, or in depression, it could be fatigue or irritability, a loss of interest in things they used to enjoy. Guilt, low self-esteem, feelings of worthlessness, helplessness, hopelessness, prolonged grief, persistent sadness, thoughts of hurting themselves. These are things that are an everyday reality for someone that you love. I guarantee it, someone that you love. And they take me to a place of hope, a place where I find hope, in a text that I bet is probably familiar to a number of you. If you have a Bible, you could open it up. We'll raise the lights a little bit. If you don't, just look on the screen and see if this is familiar to you. A reading from Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, and those of you who have dealt with addiction or dealt with mental illness, you know what that feels like. You know what it feels like to walk through the darkest valley or the valley of the shadow of death, because you know what it's like to be trapped in your own head or to feel like you're at war with your own feelings or your own mind. There's someone that you know and love dearly who I guarantee you is walking through the darkest valley in their mind and their heart right now. And who will share with them this truth that they don't have to fear evil, for God is with them. God's rod and staff, they comfort them. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. See the turn there? Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long. Now, some of you first encountered this text in King James Version, all right? I know you did. So I'm going to give you a little King James shout out. You get it once a year, okay? Once a year. Here it is. All right? And your grandmother may have told it to you this way. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And it is a shadow of death. Anxiety, depression, any form of mental illness can tinge the happiest moments, or what could be the happiest moments, with the feeling of death. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. David, who wrote this, was a shepherd. And so this wasn't kind of fanciful poetry he was writing. He was writing about his own experiences of dealing with sheep and seeing himself as those sheep, which he knew to be really stupid animals. All right? That's the truth. That have to be led to water or they'll die of thirst. That have to be led to get grass or they'll die of hunger. That have to be put in places where they'll be safe and have to be tended all the time. And Jesus thought of himself later in this same metaphor. Maybe you've read this in John chapter 10, verse 11. Jesus says this. He says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Drawing on that imagery from the Psalms, Jesus casts himself as our shepherd, as the one who will provide for our needs if we will turn to him. And maybe the heart of this Psalm 23, and if you look at it in your Bible, you'll see it is the heart, are these words. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and their staff, they comfort me. I can tell you this. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that things won't be hard. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that if you're a believer in God, everything's going to go great. This is one of the reasons I have a problem with the way the gospel is presented in some places, the so-called prosperity gospel that says that if you believe in God and if you're a good enough Christian, you're going to be rich or good things are going to happen to you. To which I would say, well, how did that work out for Stephen, the first martyr, who was killed for his faith? Or Peter, who was crucified upside down for his faith? Or Paul, who was in prison? How did that work out for the earliest believers and for so many believers today who are persecuted for their faith in parts of the world? The Bible doesn't say that faith is some sort of secret formula for everything to be hunky-dory in life. It doesn't say things are going to be hard. What it says is, I'll be with you. Is that God says he'll be with us. And we learn from Scripture that not only is God with us, but that God is for us. What I want to suggest to you is that not only is God a shepherd for us who we can turn to when things are hard, but as those of us who want to be disciples might have already been discovering, God is shepherding you into being a shepherd. This is the turn of discovering faith as something to receive and the turn into realizing that it's something to give. This is that great realization that grace isn't just a buffet for us to belly up to as hogs and to get all that we need, but it's a sending forth to love up those around us who are struggling. It's an opportunity that, in fact, a recognition of the great struggles of people can be, in a strange way, a source of joy in knowing that we can bring light and love into those places of suffering, that we can be shepherds to people in the way that God has called us to be and modeled for us in Christ, that we can make it different. We can make a different reality for people. I know some of you don't look forward to getting together with extended family. I've heard anecdotes. I've told anecdotes about my family. Most of the time when I'm thinking about what I will or won't enjoy about that, I may be thinking of my uncle that I don't like who insists on bringing up politics at the Thanksgiving table, or a relative who insists on making some grand religious assertion that means all the rest of us are going to hell. Any number of things that you can relate to. And typically when I'm thinking about how that's going to go, I'm thinking about how it relates to me and whether I'm going to have fun or I'm going to be happy or how it all will relate to this guy. I want to suggest to you a different approach. That you see gatherings with family as an opportunity to affect in a positive way someone else's reality. who quite likely might be bearing a bigger burden than you. You'll be surprised to discover that when you enter into that kind of odd space of family gatherings on a mission to bless someone, you'll be surprised by joy when you realize that you have been the most blessed. That by not thinking of what's in it for you or how it's going to be for you, suddenly the opportunity for joy has been given birth. As Robert Ingersoll put it so memorably, we rise by lifting others. We rise by lifting others. And it's not hard to do. Here's all you need to do, and it's easy to remember because it spells the word all, A-L-L. This is all you need to do. In fact, it may be all you can do. To show up with the hope to bless someone, all right? That's just kind of the jumping off part, that maybe you're not there for you. This is what we call discipleship, right? To look outside ourselves. So what's that word all? Number one, A, is to ask. When I think about this, I imagine my aunt's house where we used to gather for Christmas and oftentimes for Easter as well. And there was kind of the kitchen and the dining room and then the den where everyone kind of mixed and mingles. But then she had this kind of living room that as a kid I thought you weren't allowed to go into because it was like, really fancy furniture. I don't know if it's like Queen Anne furniture, but really like the wood was all, carved in crazy ways and stuff. And no one ever went in there. It looked like the carpet had never been walked on. It's like a white carpet. And when I think about this, I imagine myself going over to a certain person in my family and saying, hey, come in here with me. And them saying, we're not allowed to go in there. And then me saying, being the younger child of my family, being the rule breaker, saying, who cares? Let's go in there anyway, And going in there and saying, sit down for a minute, I want to catch up with you. And then me saying, so tell me, how are things going? And them saying, things are fine. And me saying, no, come on. Really, how are things? How are things at work? How are things with your daughter? I heard that she was going through X. Or how are things with your parents? I know they've had some help. Like, how are things going? Just ask in a way that conveys, I care. That conveys the truth of Psalm 23. You're not alone. Even though I walk through the valley of the darkest shadow, I'll fear no evil, for you're with me. And through us, God makes himself known. You're not alone. I'm here, I care. Ask, and ask follow-up questions. And don't one-up what they say, and don't feel the need to say, well, oh yeah, me too, da-da-da-da-da. No, just ask, and then listen, L. Listen with your mind and with your heart. Listen and take in their reality. And then the last L is easy. Love them in whatever way God puts on your heart. It may be, hey, can I pray for you right now? It may be a week later writing them a note saying, the best part of my holiday was getting to catch up with you. I'm praying for what you shared with me. In fact, I'm going to be praying for you every day. You'll be stunned at how making a gathering an opportunity to love someone up, how that will lift you up. I'm so thankful for the people that have helped me in my journey with anxiety. I've had great counselors. I've had great friends, a supportive wife and family. I was really blessed to be raised by social workers, and and didn't have that stigma that kept me. And even still, and Julie would be the first to tell you, sometimes I've been like, not wanting to ask for help. But what I want to say to you is ask for help. Ask. Ask me or someone trusted if you're struggling with grief or addiction, anxiety or depression. You only get one crack at life. Don't limp through it. And then be aware that the people around you, many of them, are struggling with things that you'll never see. And may that call forth from you gentleness and mercy. I'm surprised to tell you this, that at this point in my life, I'm thankful for the anxiety disorder that I've had. Just by making me more empathetic, it's made me a better person. Someone people are willing to share their struggles with because they certainly know I don't have it all together. May we all be vulnerable in that way where God's healing can work through us and into the lives of others.